Thank you and welcome back to the Patriots 300 level podcast. My name's Eric and I'm joined by my co-host Kevin. Welcome back for our 78th episode this week where we'll be recapping another Patriots loss, this time to the Miami Dolphins, and previewing the upcoming game this upcoming Sunday versus the Houston Texans. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pat's 300 level pod for up-to-the-minute updates and commentary on news of the day. Kevin, another home game for you that you attended. Unfortunately, I guess fortunately I didn't. I missed this one and I watched it on TV, but going into it, I didn't have high hopes. I know I predicted on Twitter, like we posted our predictions. I predicted them to win close. You predicted them to lose ugly 9-6. I don't think any of us was expecting to be as ugly of a game as it was. I know we talked a little bit yesterday, just had our airing of grievances vent session after the game, but that for me, that was probably the ugliest, worst coach, worst played NFL game I have seen in my life from both sides. There's some games where I've seen where it's one side is terrible, but both sides essentially seem like they were trying to give the other team the win, and neither team would take advantage of it. What was your thoughts?
Oh yeah, I told you that was the worst game I've ever witnessed in my entire life from a combination of two teams in my lifetime. And it originally the worst one before that was probably the Jets game 2 years ago when it was 3-3, and then it was the Marcus Jones punt return for the touchdown to win it. But this is horrendous overall. There was mistakes after mistake after mistake and penalties and penalties, and the game just kept going on. And originally you were going into the game like, oh, this will be a nice little quick game. Everyone's going to be running the ball because neither of these two teams can throw it, and it'll be a nice quick game. We'll be out of here by 3:30, like, and have the
Yeah.
rest of the day kind of for you. And no, it just kept dragging, and they kept adding time to the clock because there's like clock issues, and it was it was not pleasant to watch. I think the outcome was similar. If you look at the score, you would have said, "Oh, that's like that kind of ugly, like bad scoring games." But it was way worse than the score even looked
Yeah.
by how bad. And then the other thing is the Dolphins should have had it by even more,
Yep.
based on the amount of mistakes that they made. So, yeah,
I just
it
pulled
was
up
an
the
ugly game.
stats from the 10-3 game just because it's been a while, so I didn't remember. Difference between that and this was nowhere as close in number of penalties. Eight for the Patriots for 55 yards, so up there in number, but yardage wise, not a lot, and only 3 for 15 for the Jets. No turnovers at all. Difference though is Patriots had about 300 yards versus only 100 for the Jets. It was 297 for the Patriots, up
Mhm.
103 for the Jets. So they moved the ball but just couldn't score. Jets just couldn't do anything. But so that for me, like that was a slight difference is why this was the worst that I've seen is just so many mistakes, so many pre-snap penalties, so many mistakes during the play, not executing. It was just an ugly game.
Yep. And I think both of us we put this is a huge coaching issue game where it
Yeah.
was at all, I guess, two phases. I don't think you can really blame the coaches for the special teams miss kick, but um
Yeah,
this
special
is
special teams overall was good yesterday. That was the only
yeah.
part of the game that was good for the Patriots.
Yeah, but
And
defense and
before you get into the
offense.
coaching too, is
Mm.
they coached well. It seemed game one, and it's progressively gotten worse each game. Um, the Seahawks game was bad, then the Jets game was even worse. The 49ers game was on par with the Jets, and then this was worse than all of them. So you'd hope to see some improvements week to week, but it's just getting worse and worse.
No,
Sorry, go
agreed.
ahead on what you were saying with the coaching.
Yeah, no, I was gonna get to that when I was gonna talk about how bad the offenses started looking, where it's not getting better, it's actually getting worse. So, but again, the coaching overall is everything. I would say you look at the defense; they end up giving up 190 yards rushing to a team that you knew had to rush the ball going into the game, where they can't
Yeah.
throw. They have Tyler Huntley as a quarterback, who's not known as a great passer. And then you look at the offense where they ran the ball pretty effectively. They had
Mhm.
a team historic amount of yards per attempt at 7.9 yards per attempt, which broke the Patriots in-game record for that. And they ended up out. They threw the ball way more than they ran the ball.
Almost double. They
Almost
they drop
double.
back. They drop back to pass. If you count Brissett's scramble,
Hmm.
they drop back to pass 30. Sorry, I just had it. Drop back to pass 37 times and ran it or drew up a run play 18 times.
Hmm.
They did run a 19 because one of the ones was Brissett's scramble, but they dropped back to pass 37 times. So almost double or more than
Hmm.
double actual called passes versus run.
Yeah. So you get Mayo even Mayo mentioned that like in the post game where, and this is the thing that drives me nuts about him now, where he goes to saying the whole time, "Oh, AVP's head coach offense to gotta ask AVP. AVP's the one that has the plan. AVP, AVP, AVP." And Mayo is the head coach. I don't care if AVP is the head coach of the offense. You're the head coach of this football team. If you want to run the ball, you run the ball. You tell them, I don't give a shit what you're doing. You need to run the ball. You have the ball with a minute and 11 seconds left with three timeouts left on the 12-yard line, and you
Yep.
don't run the
First and
ball
10.
once
Yep.
at all. That's just ineptitude beyond what's imaginable. And then the other thing, where you look at what these players are doing, where they're playing undisciplined. This is not Patriots football. They're lacking any sort of discipline, and it's showing on the field. You look at the reckless penalties that they have. They're not aware of the in-game situations. You have where Polk had that toe tap where it wasn't a real toe tap, and he's out of the end zone. You have him egging on the crowd and not being in the huddle, trying to have them boo the refs more. Where you got to get back in the huddle and be ready for the next play. And he's still complaining about it after the game, saying it was a catch. Where if you should know what a catch is and what's not a catch. Every player should know. And if you don't know what it was, you should be told afterwards what it is and not blaming the refs for what happened. And again, that was a bad throw that led up to it. But
Yeah. And,
but
and you
still.
could argue the rule, like I think it's not a great rule where if it's a front toe tap, it's a
Hmm.
catch, but back it's not. But based on how the rule is written, that's a clear no catch. When I saw it live, I knew it like live without the replay. I didn't think it was a catch because it just seemed like he
Oh,
didn't get it.
I didn't even think he had his foot. I didn't think it was
Yeah,
even close.
exactly.
It was a lot
But
closer
then
than I thought it
seeing
was.
the replay, I just knew right away it wasn't a catch,
Hmm.
even though they were trying to say they couldn't fully remember what the rule was on the
Hmm.
TV broadcast of it, but that's just what the rule is.
Yep.
And
And
it's
then
been like
Zoe
that
knew
for
right
years.
away when it happened that it wasn't a catch because he remembered that they had the same thing go against them back against the Falcons a couple years ago with Brandon Bolden. And then at the end of the game, where you have 12 seconds left and you have to know. So I don't know who this was, if it was AVP, not telling. Well, AVP shouldn't have to tell Brissett. Brissett's a veteran. This is the whole reason why you have Brissett here, where he shouldn't go making these mistakes where you have 12 seconds left, you have no timeouts, you cannot throw the ball to the middle of the field. And what does he do? He throws it to Hunter Henry in the middle of the field and the clock expires. Not that they probably could have won that game anyway, but he had Douglas coming out on the going towards the sideline where he could have hit him going out of bounds and then stop the clock and had one attempt to go to the end zone. Or if not, you throw it out of the end, you throw it out and then you wait for one more play and throw it to the end zone that play. It's just the situational football here is not up to snuff, and not just
Yeah.
not up to snuff to like a Bill Belichick team. It's not up to snuff for an NFL team. They're looking completely undisciplined. They're getting worse as the game goes by, and it's really bad right now.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with what you're saying. And Brissett should have known not to throw it to Henry because unless Henry is wide open or he is running where you think maybe he can outrun the guy once he catches it, it's going to be a tough play. But if you think that's what the case is, then you can throw it to him. But he's double, triple covered. He has no, once he catches it, he has no shot. But also,
Hmm.
it's on Hunter Henry to know I'm going to get tackled. We're going to lose the game. Drop the ball.
Hmm.
Like you can catch it, and if you see you're about to get tackled, then just drop him. You want to make sure that they don't intercept it. But that's also on him, a captain, 3-year captain now, to know the situation to not catch that ball. I know it's instinct to catch a ball if it's thrown to you, but you have to know the situation.
Hmm. And then another big thing where they made a big thing around here before was that you learn from your mistakes. You don't make the same mistake twice. And it's happened game after game where you see before you had
Which
Ramondre.
situation are you talking about? There's
I know. But so the latest one was with Mayo, where the exact same thing happened the end of the half. And they're lucky that they ended up missing the field goal because it was the
That
same
Miami missed
exact.
the field goal.
Yeah, Miami missed the field goal because it was the exact same situation with the Seahawks. And I was saying it, I was like, what the hell? Like, just make sure you run the ball.
Yeah.
Don't pull the Seahawks. Make sure you learn from it. And what do? They run it once, they get 8 yards, and you're like, okay, they're gonna run the ball. They're gonna just drain the clock. No, they end up throwing twice. They have no chance. And then end up having to punt the ball back to the Dolphins. They shank the punt. They return it for like 10 or 15 yards, and then they end up missing the field goal. But they should have gotten points out of it. That's
So
twice now that
did
Mayo
you watch
screwed
did you
up.
watch Bill on McAfee today?
Yes.
So he actually talked about this same scenario. He didn't call out the Patriots, but when talking about situational awareness, he was talking about him as a head coach approaching the end of a half, also end of a tie game or a close game, is he approaches it from the basketball perspective of last shot, where whatever we do, I'm going to make sure that we have the last possession and the other team doesn't get it. If you think you can get points, great, go ahead. But if not, you don't want to give the other team a chance to get points. And that's something that, like you said, he was essentially saying like he would run it, make sure he gets the first down first, and then you can go into your play calls. And then I know some people aren't always big fans where sometimes at the end of the half, he would do some draws or things like that, and they don't get yards and don't get a touchdown or get points. But he's doing that because of the situational awareness, making sure the other team doesn't. And that's, like you said, that's 2 times in the last 4 games that Mayo didn't learn from the mistakes, did the exact same thing. The reason why I said what not learning from your mistakes, what are you talking about, is I was also thinking of the challenging aspect. So last week versus the 49ers, George Kittle caught the ball on a diving catch on third down for a first down. It looked live and even seeing the replays, I'm not sure he caught the ball. Depending on how you interpret the rule, it would have been a close call, but I thought that that was worth a challenge because it was a third down, which turned into a first down. They were near a little further back from field goal range, so it would have been a long field goal versus getting a first down and having a chance for a touchdown. He doesn't challenge it. Later in the game, he challenges a clear catch. And then this past game, when Brissett scrambled on the one run he had for 10 yards, clear as day, he got a first down, but the refs spotted the ball shy of the third down marker, and he doesn't challenge it. And then what happens that play? Nick Levette, the center, gets a false start, which again, I don't know if that was, I saw the replay many times. I don't think that was a false start, but they called it a false start. And then you move the ball back to, instead of being third and inches, to 3rd and 5.5, and they don't get the first down. So that's ended a drive where situationally Mayo should know I need to challenge this. 2 weeks
No,
in a row.
no, yep, 100%. And then you see kind of how he's trying to gain control and kind of show accountability, where it's not really doing anything. Where Mondre, and I love Mondre, but he fumbled 4 games in a row, and Mayo was like, oh, well, he's not going to start. He's has to take accountability for it. He didn't play one series. That's nothing. That's not showing that that ball security is job security. That's just saying you're having the first series off, where realistically you're going to be switching off anyway,
Yeah.
usually, where usually you get the first series and the next guy gets the next, or sometimes it's 2-1. But one drive of 3 plays is
Yeah.
not really any
Not
kind
only,
of.
yeah, not only was it the first drive, it was 3 plays, a three and
Mhm.
out with only one run on that drive.
Yeah. So it doesn't really show to anyone. Like, is he really being held accountable? No. Like, what he really should be doing is getting kind of sat for a quarter, maybe a half, to really show that you can't go dropping the ball. Again, he didn't drop the ball here, but what are the odds he's going to drop it 5 games in a row? Probably pretty slim. But not great. And then just the amount of penalties and dumb penalties that they're having, where they don't know what they're doing. They 12 men on the field.
Yeah, 12 men
That
on the field when Miami had 4th and 1. They were going to punt the ball away and you're going to get it back.
hmm
And then they get a first down and their drive continues.
hmm and then you had Ellis's pass interference penalty, where you have the guy, even if he catches the ball there, he's what, 10 yards away from the first down marker. Like,
Yeah.
there's no reason to be tackling the guy clear as day, too,
Yeah.
before he gets the ball. It's just poorly coached. And then we get to AVP,
But
where.
before
Oh,
you get to that too, there's a couple things that I noticed in the post-game press conference where Gerard was saying how they lost the time of possession again and saying how that's something that they've been focusing on week after week. They lost 34-25 in time of possession, but how do you keep time of possession? You run the ball and you run the ball effectively. What were they doing yesterday? Running the ball effectively, but they were passing almost twice as much as they were running. How did Miami can keep time of possession? They ran the ball. They ran it 41 times versus 31 times.
Yep.
I don't it's I really don't know what else to say. It's clear as day. You're a running team. You said in the offseason you're a run first team. You're running the ball effectively and you're not doing it. You're passing with the inept passing game. So again, it's stuff like that that bothers me where it seems clear as day and he's not doing it. And also just calling out players in post game instead of just taking accountability. Maybe we're just spoiled being Patriot fans where we're just used to Bill not doing that. And maybe it's a lot more common in other teams, other organizations for coaches to do that, even though it's small things here and there. But things like that, calling out Brissett for having a bad game, calling out Mapu for being fatigued at the end of the game. Um, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's something that players have always said that they loved about Bill, where he would never put him out there, and it would always be about him and taking the pressure off of them. So
Yeah,
if Mayo wants to be this player's coach and he wants to be kind of not be as hard ass and all that sort of stuff, you're really not looking good there by throwing these guys under the bus, where you should be taking the blame. And that's the other thing too about what Mayo's been doing lately, where it just looks like he's trying to pass off the buck on someone else every single
yeah,
time, where he's never taking accountability, saying that it starts first with him, where he's the one that's supposed to set the game plan. He's the one that's supposed to say we should be running the ball. He's the one that should be figuring out that the Dolphins need to run the ball and how do we stop that? And they can't stop it. And they run it up their ass to end the game, to win the game that way.
yeah,
That's just the mark of a bad team, where you can't stop what they're going to do. And if they didn't know they're going to run, that's another big issue there
yeah,
too. And then just how kind of out of position the scheme wise on defense, where you have probably the best kind of group of corners in the league, between Gonzo, between Marcus Jones, and then Jonathan Jones, and you're playing primarily zone coverage. And that's when you're going to get eaten alive against Hill. Where you saw Gonzo when he was in man coverage, he was locking up Hill. But
yeah.
when he wasn't, that's when Hill was getting his catches. And again, he didn't have as big of a game just because you have Tyler Huntley as the quarterback.
Yeah.
But
And one thing on that too, before you move on, is when you're facing teams that are like the Chiefs, for instance, where they're primarily passing the ball, or in years past when they had Tyreek and Kelsey and they're primarily passing the ball, it's tough to be man to man all game just because DBs will get tired and fatigued very quickly, especially if it's like very fast guys. But
hmm
you're playing a team in Miami that's mostly running the ball or doing quick passes.
hmm
That's not an instance where DBs are going to get exhausted because they're covering guys all over the length of the field. So this
hmm
is an instance where they should have been playing primarily man.
yeah. Um, so then just 190 yards rushing is despicable for what this defense is supposed to be. This defense is not it's supposed to be helping the team right now, and it's not.
Okay.
Between the defense and the offense, they're both pretty not playing really well. Of course,
Yeah.
the offense is worse than the defense, but
Yeah, but
the defense
also
should be
too,
playing a lot better right now.
they couldn't defend the run, and even the pass game, which wasn't great for Miami, they
hmm
outpassed you with a third
Yeah.
string quarterback.
Yeah, agreed. And
Yeah.
that's again, that's where that zone coverage came in, when he was just eating up the soft parts of the zone,
Yeah.
where and they're not doing any sort of heavy disguises or any sort of heavy schemes too. So it really kind of makes you wonder, like, how much how much have they absorbed between you had Mayo here and you had Covington here when Bill and Steve were here. How much did they actually absorb while they were running things for the defense, whereas Steve and Bill were game planning? Were they listening on why things were happening? Do they know why things were happening? Or are they trying to make their own little mark on it and then just doing a really bad job of it? Again, Covington, he's going to take a little while to learn to kind of call plays. So I'm not really putting it as much on him. I'm putting it more on Mayo, because this is supposed to be Mayo's baby. This is where all the money is on the
Yeah.
team, where on the defense. And it's supposed to be the strength right now, which was the strength of them last year, where if you had a competent quarterback last year, they would have been kind of edging into a playoff spot just by how close those games were because of the
Yeah.
defense and how well the defense was playing. And right now, that's not the situation, where you technically have a more competent quarterback of Brissett, but there's other things with Brissett that doesn't do as well as Mac
Yeah.
does, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Um, I'm not saying that. one's better than the other, but you're seeing the deficiencies there.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, they're not holding up their end. All right. Anything else on the defense before we get to AVP?
Nope. Pretty
All
much
right.
everything you said.
AVP. That's another one where he's gonna have to be gone by the end of the year. I haven't seen anything, and who knows? Maybe when May goes in, he opens up the playbook more, and he
Yeah.
shows he's got these exotic things, and he's just hamstrung by Brissett and by kind of the shaky line at first. But I don't see that happening because
Yeah.
just you don't see the little things with him about even though they are playing poorly, but the offensive line is playing poorly, and they don't have time to open up the deep passing routes. There's things that you can do to take the pressure off of Brissett and off the line to try and get the ball out quickly, and they're not doing it. They're not
Yeah.
using pre-snap motion. They're not doing as many screens or bubble screens
Yeah.
or end arounds or options or RPOs and that sort of thing. Where you look at what other teams do when they have a bad offensive line, they can kind of play around it. They're not doing any of that scheme-wise on offense. They're running this old school West Coast offense from like the 90s where they don't have pre-snap motion. It's this kind of this is what you get. We're gonna run these kind of stretch plays and kind of long routes, and it worked well then, but it doesn't have all those kind of nuances that a lot of people were looking for when they're like, "Oh, we're gonna get this new age West Coast." Where you have like the Kyle Shanahan's, you have um, like the Clint Kubiaks, you have not Sean McDermott, what's this guy's name? The Rams coach, Sean McVay,
Yeah.
all those sorts of things. You have this old school uh offense that's from like the Browns, and
Yeah.
no one goes looking at the Browns saying this is what I want my offense to be. I need to
Yeah.
get their offensive coordinator, their assistant line coach, and this is what's going to make a perfect team
Yeah.
where they haven't done
The
anything
Yeah,
in.
the thing with the Browns offense, a couple years or from like 2000 to like 2022, that time span, they had a very good offensive line. At that time, they did. They don't
Mhm,
anymore. But at that time, they had a very good offensive line, and they had a really good 1-2 punch in the running game with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt.
mhm.
Also, some receivers as well, but they were pretty much a run first team, and they just ran it down your throat because they had two really good running backs behind a very good offensive line, and that's why they were
Mhm.
successful for so long.
Yeah. And again, pre-snap motion is a huge thing.
Yeah,
And I don't think we've actually talked about it here yet, but a lot of it has kind of made the rounds where you look at the Patriots, the league average is in the mid 20s for
yeah,
pre-snap motion. So that's not just motion where you move like the slot guy over from one end to the other, you set, and then that's how you see if there's man or zone coverage. This is when you're actually moving at the snap of the ball, and that's what you see a lot with like with the Chiefs, and you see it with the Dolphins a lot. We see it with Hill and trying to get these kind of fast guys more open and moving at the snap. That way you can kind of get them off the ball and off the defender. And league average is in the mid 20s. The higher ends are a little bit are probably I think maybe in the 30s or low 40s. The Patriots are 8%. They are dead last in the league in pre-snap motion. That's the biggest thing that would help this team right now, besides running the ball more. Um, is using those things and trying to get your fast playmakers involved in different ways. And even I don't really think Tyquan Thornton's anything special. They're really trying to get rid of him, but he can't get off the line because
yeah,
any sort of defender gets in there, they'll jam him and he can't get off and run a right route. If you at least move him at the snap, he has more of a chance of kind of breaking through and going because it has a little bit of steam going ahead. And again, do that with Pop Douglas, and then do those kind of bubble screens, or even do kind of pick plays they're not doing.
yeah,
It's just a lot of concepts that are not that complicated. Where I'm thinking of it, and Eric's thinking
yeah.
of it, and a lot of other people are thinking of it, and we're not NFL coaches. Why isn't he thinking of it? And why is he just one of those guys that just runs an offense and runs it, and like we're gonna do what we do well, and they're not even doing that. Like how
Yeah,
Bill
it
says
made
with
me
the
think. It
Colts
made me think of
defensive
my
coordinator.
yeah. It made me think of my high school football coach who said during a game we're gonna run this play until we get it right, and he just kept running it, and they kept stopping it every single time, and he just kept going back to it over and over and
Mhm.
over again. It's the definition of insanity, which is why we weren't a good football team.
But again, it's just
Yeah,
I haven't seen anything yet, and I know everyone wants to say, "Oh, give him time." Once he doesn't have a line, he doesn't have a quarterback, but there's things that he could be doing right now that he's not. and
Yeah.
there's common sense things that he's not doing, like he throwing the ball four straight times on when you at the 12-yard line when you have a minute and 11 seconds left with three timeouts,
Yeah.
or even if at the end of the half, I know Mayo should be willing saying make sure you just run this out, but he can have an idea and say, hey, like this isn't the greatest thing to do. Like
Yeah.
we've thrown for at that point at the half, because I know going into the fourth quarter, they only had 80 yards passing. So I
Yeah.
don't know what it was at the half, but they probably had 50 yards passing or maybe less. And you're going into the half with that much, and you're thinking I could drive the ball. They were at the 10-yard line. I can drive the ball 50 more yards passing than we had the entire game so far in 50
And
seconds.
if you are going to pass, do a screen or something like that where it's essentially a run without it being a
Mm-hmm.
run, and maybe you can break something.
Mm-hmm.
But
Like it doesn't seem, the more things go on, the more kind of fears that we had going into the season are just
yeah,
showing themselves. Where you
it's
have,
it's worse than I ever thought it would be.
yeah, I
And
never
then
thought it would be this bad.
even the first and 10 on the 12-yard line with a minute something to go. Let's say you do pass it on that first play and you get a touchdown. Miami gets the ball back with a minute plus to go and three timeouts and only have to get into field goal range.
Hmm.
So they have a good kicker. I know he missed a kick yesterday and then they fumbled a snap another time, but realistically, they have to go 40 yards with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle as your primary targets with a gassed defense.
Hmm.
That's
And you know what
not
they probably would have done? They probably really ran the ball and ran it up their ass in 30
probably
seconds and then got in the field goal that
exactly.
way.
So regardless of if running being your best option there just because of how the game was going, situationally, you should have been running the ball too.
Hmm. No, agreed. Um, Anything else on the coaching before we get into kind of
No,
the
I think we
players? I know
hammered that down for
we've
the last
hammered
30
it out.
minutes.
Jacoby Brissett, I think the last thing to really get, and maybe we could talk about the line quickly too. But Brissett, well, we're kind of ineptitude. We're getting to the point where I, me and Eric both want Drake May to sit as long as he possibly can. He's not. I don't think he's fundamentally ready to get behind this line and ruin the progress that they've
Yeah,
made. And who knows what kind of progress they made, kind of with the coaching that they have. But they're getting to the point where it's getting worse and worse, and he's been a detriment to this team the last two games.
yep,
And he's so slow at reading progressions and even just throwing the ball, like getting the ball out. He just looks like a statue. It looks like the old Bledsoe days at the end where you had Ernie Adams saying he looks like a wildebeest under attack.
yep,
He just doesn't have it, and he's sped up. He's not seeing the field well, and I just don't see how you can keep putting him out there and
yeah,
not lose the team.
yep.
That's the biggest thing, because all these other guys are going to say this guy is not putting us in the position to win. If you had Drake May out there last game, they probably would have won. Um,
We don't know. Again, it's tough to say behind that offensive line where he'd be seeing pressure for the first time. And I know the offensive line. We'll get to the line in a minute. Everyone's saying, "Oh, the offensive line was great this week, or it was so much improved." They still had, let me pull it up, a 43.8% pressure rate. And again, part of this is on Brissett because he was holding the ball too long, but still 43.8% pressure rate, which was their lowest of the season, but was the second highest in the NFL this week.
yeah.
So again, it was improved compared to absolutely historically horrendous offensive line play, but it was still horrendous. We've talked about this the last 3 years. Anything higher than 30% is considered high pressure rate. Anything higher than 40% is extremely high. They've been over 40% every single game this week. 43.8% is their best play of the season so far.
Yeah.
So again,
Um,
seeing pressure that much, even though it's better than it was, does he pull some Mac Joneses from last year like he did in college, where in college he got away with it just because he's much more athletic and talented compared to the opposition defenses? Does he throw a pick six? Does he fumble the ball on a strip sack? Does he do something where he throws it out of bounds or doesn't read the defenses? So that's why I don't know if he actually wins the game with him, because I don't know how he's going to be in front of pressure.
I just think by how poor the Dolphins are and how bad their defense is and the entire operation really this year,
Yeah.
that would have been, I think, the spot to put him out and see what he could have done. Even halfway through the game, you knew that Brissett had nothing really.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the hard part is going from that, which would have been kind of a soft landing spot for him, where if you put him in, we're gonna get to the Texans later.
Yeah.
It's just it's not a great spot to
No,
to
it's
have your
not at
rookie
all.
start for the first time.
Yeah.
And this is again where the roster construction, where they could have really benefited by having a veteran backup quarterback on the
Yeah.
practice squad, basically on the practice squad. That way, if you have to go off of Brissett and you don't want to ruin the development plan that you have for May if he's not ready, you can go to someone else, and they
Yeah.
don't have that. And it's just kind of questionable why they didn't kind of go that route. Um, or maybe they were hoping that this would happen and they could just go to May, and that it kind of forces their hand for
Yeah.
them. Because the other thing with AVP is really playing May right now is his really only shot to keep his job. Because right now, the way Brissett's looking, there's no way that he's going to keep his job after this, and he would need that kind of new toy, and that he's probably going to look better than Brissett the first like game or two before he gets sped up. Um, so what he can do with
As
that?
long as he doesn't get hurt. That's the one thing with Brissett is every single game, there's two or three plays where he gets
Hmm.
hit, and I think that's the play where he's done,
Hmm.
where he's going to be hurt and May's going to have to come in. Literally every single game. So is May going to be able to absorb those hits? Is his
Hmm.
body big enough to where he's not going to feel it as much? Or is I don't know what his pain tolerance or threshold is, and also he hasn't been hit by guys like this before.
Hmm. No, agreed. But again, Brissett. Everything. He's too slow to read the field. He's too slow in releasing the ball. He's making mistakes where you're not supposed to as a veteran. The whole point of bringing him in, and he's supposed to be that veteran quarterback, not making mistakes. And it's like the same thing with Brian Hoyer in that Chiefs game where he
Yeah.
ended up thinking he had a timeout and he didn't. And then Brissett in this situation throwing to the middle of the field where the guy's covered and there's no timeouts left and you can't clock the ball, where you need at least 17 seconds. And even that spot, you probably needed like 22 seconds ish to really get down there and clock it
Yeah.
in time. It's just the situational awareness
Did you
really
use
isn't
that
there right
17
now.
seconds nugget from the Bill O'Brien Games with Names episode when he
I
was saying
actually I remembered it when Zoe talked about it today too. So I remembered it from
because
Zoe and Bill O'Brien, because Bill
Bill
O'Brien was
O'Brien
saying that
used it from
Ernie.
Ernie.
Yeah, Ernie said that you need 17 seconds is the minimum, the
Yeah.
absolute minimum that you need. So that's why I was like, I don't even think of that spot.
Yeah, that's too
Um,
long. That's 40 yards you have to run upfield.
yeah, I don't think they would have had it done in 17 seconds. I think it
And
would have been more
it's
22.
17 seconds from the start of the play.
Mhm.
But again, that's you yeah. It's not from the end of the play, it's the start, but still.
Yeah.
And then just quickly shifting to the offensive line before we move on. So again, it was better. Who would have thought Vidarian Lowe is your top offensive lineman? He's the savior. Zero pressures allowed, one hold. Nick Levette was horrendous. 10 pressures allowed, one sack, three hits, one hold, one false start. I feel bad putting the blame on him because he's not a center. He came into
Mhm.
the season a guard. He's never played center in the NFL before. I know he had some snaps in the preseason, but he didn't really practice much in camp at center, and he's not a center. So it's tough to expect someone to play a position they've never done before, where center is actually one of the hardest positions to play, where especially if you're lined up against a nose guard or having to call out the defenses, the alignments, what's the pressure or what's the, what is it? Pass
The
protection going to
Mike.
be,
Hmm.
etc. So it's tough for him in that situation. Even if it's someone that hasn't played in the NFL but is a center in college, they know these different schemes and what you're supposed to be doing. So again, terrible game by him, but I can't really put too much on him because of that. Owenu, another bad game for him. Four pressures, two hits. He's been very underwhelming this year. And he was back at guard this game. And that's a position that he was an elite guard, but he wasn't good this game. Jacobs was
A
okay,
lot of
better
mental
than expected.
mistakes too
Yeah,
there, where
exactly.
he wasn't covering the right guy when he
And,
had
and I,
to.
I wonder if part of this is just the non-cohesiveness of the offensive line where they keep shifting people game in, game out. I know we talked about this, I believe,
Hmm.
last episode, but if you don't know what the guy next to you is doing just because you haven't played together, you might not be picking up the correct guy. So
Hmm.
again, it might not be fair to be putting all this blame on him, and it might be more on the coaching staff with Peters, offensive line coach or AVP. But you can't be shifting offensive linemen. We said this in training camp, and we've seen this throughout. You can't be changing it week in, week out. I know there's injuries and you have to deal with that, but when you start at right tackle in camp, then move to guard, then move back to tackle, now back at guard, at different guards, different tackles playing next to him, and then even different centers now too. So how much is on him, and how much is it just the players around him?
Yep. And then one quick nugget about Leverett, which I don't think you mentioned, but when since PFF has been tracking
Yep.
pressures, this is the record-breaking amount of pressures from one player in a game.
Okay.
So that was a kind of a crazy stat to see. But
Yep.
all right, anything quick on the defense you want? I think we kind of.
Only thing I want to say on the defense is I know Miami only scored 15 points, but their offense was driving throughout the entire game. They had 10 drives outside of the two-play drive at the end of the half where they got the ball back after the Patriots. But essentially, 10 drives with seven of them ending up in at least field goal position. This is a Miami team that hasn't had a lead the entire season before this game. I know they won the last game of the season on the last play of the game, but they had one touchdown, three field goals made, another field goal that they missed, another field goal where there was a bad snap slash hold, and then another time where it was third down and field goal range, and then the center snapped the ball too early and it kicked them out of field goal range. Then they punted it twice, with one of them being where they just ran the ball three times trying to get a first down because they were running it all up the Patriots defense and they were trying to run the clock out. And then there was just one other punt and then the interception. So for a defense that's supposed to be elite against a terrible Miami offense right now on a third string quarterback, this is not good where they're driving the ball at will. Again, only 15 points, but still seven times out of 10, 70% of the time they ended up in field goal range at least.
Yep. No, completely agree. All right, three up, three down, real quick.
Yep.
'Cause this episode seems like it's going really long.
Yeah. So my first one is Vidarian Lowe. He didn't have the best game out of everyone. Maybe he did. He was 90 PFF pass blocking, but it was just compared to how bad this offensive line has been, how bad he has been, and just to have a performance like that where he was this pretty much the anchor of the offensive line. So I have to give him credit there. He had a really good game, especially for his ability, what he's done so far, and how the rest of the offensive line has been. Number two is Gonzo. He pretty much locked up Tyreek Hill, and he also had the interception. He's been incredible this season. I know my prediction this the preseason episode isn't looking too good, but I'm glad about that. He's really looking like an elite corner, one of the best corners in the NFL. And number three was Stevenson. Only touchdown of the game for the Patriots. Ran the ball at will, averaged, I believe, 7 or 8 yards a carry. So really good game by him.
Yep. All right. So I got pretty similar ones. I got Gonzo first. Again, playing really well, especially his last 2 weeks
Yep.
or so. Stevenson ran really well. Didn't have a fumble, which was good. And then Brandon Schooler with
Yeah.
that really nifty punt block that he had with that kind of twist, getting his hand in there, not hitting the punter. So even though that punt block amounted to nothing,
Nothing.
where
Yeah.
where they get the ball at the 25 and then actually move up. I think they ended up netting 8 yards on that drive and then missing the field goal.
Yes.
Um,
Sly pulled a Chad Ryland,
yeah. So,
who ironically had the game winning kick yesterday for the Cardinals.
yep. All right. Three down.
For me,
I don't think this would be a
entire
surprise
once
based off of what we've
yeah,
talked about today.
once again, entire coaching staff. So if I wasn't doing it entire, it would probably be Mayo one, AVP two, maybe Covington three, or probably Brissett three.
Hmm.
But just overall, entire coaching staff one, Brissett number two, and then offensive line number three, pretty much for everything we talked about.
Yep. All right. So I've got the entire coaching staff. I agree with it. If it was broken up, it would have been Mayo, Van Pelt, Brissett. So coaching staff, Brissett, and then I couldn't pick between two, so I Keon White, where he had just
Yeah.
two really bad penalties, and Leverett, where he had a historically bad game, and I don't really put I don't really blame him because he's not a
Yeah,
center, but
yeah,
he's there, so you gotta blame the
yeah,
results. So
yep,
all right, news around the NFL, real quick. Jabril Peppers, I think everyone's probably seen the story. Arrested on
yeah,
Saturday morning. Um, don't really know the full situation. It'll be interesting to see kind of what evidence he says that he has. He claims he has
yeah,
video evidence, exonerating himself. If not, that's a
yeah.
pretty, really, really bad look.
Yeah.
Not
All
great.
the charges and the report of what happened is not a good look on him. It's pretty bad. So
Yeah,
again,
if
like
he doesn't have the evidence that he
he,
claims he has,
he needs to be
I
gone.
would, yeah, he'd have to be cut because
Yeah,
that's not acceptable,
yep,
and not something they've stood for in the past. So it's
yeah,
one thing to have guns and go through an airport, but it's another thing to go like beating a woman. So
yeah.
I would
And again,
expect and hope.
he's arguably one of your best players, and they just signed him to a big or a
Hmm.
contract extension. But if he doesn't have that evidence, you need to get him cut him loose.
Yep. Which I would think they may have because if he's not gone already, like
I think
he,
they're trying to collect. I think it's too soon to really know.
yeah.
But
But we'll see. So,
yeah,
not too much on that. Devontae Adams, again, the Raiders trying to trade him. He wants to be gone. Raiders are looking for a second round pick. Belichick and everyone else. There was actually a report after that, from I can't remember who it was. I think it was Tom Pelissero saying that teams are saying the Raiders' ask is way too high, based on what they want for him and not willing to take any money off the contract. So Bill was saying how for a second round pick, they would have to eat money or restructure the contract, but no one's going to trade a second round pick for the current status of the player, which makes sense, based off how much he's owed, especially going into next year. I think it's like a 36 million guaranteed, not guaranteed, but $36 million, just for 1 year. And it's kind of tough to get that on your books the right way.
yeah, and I'm pretty sure
Um,
there's some like void dead years at the end of it too, if I'm
mhm.
not mistaken.
Yep. All right. Bad coaching, game management around the league. You want to hit this one because you had the post that with
Yeah,
the Bills.
I'm trying to find the stats from the Bills game yesterday because that's the one that specifically stood out to me. But it's just all throughout the league, just coaches not having situational awareness. Buffalo was, I believe, they were leading. They were in their own territory, but this Bill talked about on McAfee this week, or but they were leading. I think they were. Houston had three timeouts, but they had the ball in their own territory. I think within their 5 yard line, but they just needed a first down. Threw the ball three straight times to punt the ball away to Houston, to not let Houston even use any of their timeouts and get the ball back and just need a field goal.
Hmm.
So again, it's just more bad situational awareness. So that's just the one that stood out, but there were many throughout the entire game.
Yep. All right. 5 questions
Okay,
around the league.
so I'll start with these because I wrote most of them, but
Mhm.
I think the biggest one, for as a Patriot fan for me, I was starting to think of this. Patriots are already 1-4. Not mathematically eliminated, but looking like playoffs are
You
not
know what would have
in.
been crazy though? Whoever won that game yesterday is
They're
going
in
to be in
second
second
place in the
place
East.
of the
Yeah.
East. So this is the thing that drove me nuts too about their offseason plan, where this division was not as formidable as a lot of people were
This is
claiming
a
it was.
rebuild year for the Bills.
Yeah.
It,
And
yeah.
they could have, if they put the right team around there, they could have contended while rebuilding at the same time.
Yep. Exactly.
And they did not. They didn't spend the money, they didn't sign the right guys, and they did nothing to do that,
Yep.
which kind of drives me nuts, but that's here nor there.
Agree. So considering that they're 1-4, they're likely not to make the playoffs. What would you consider to be a successful season, or what are you looking for the last 12 games of the season that you want to happen for the Patriots?
I think the successful season would right now. I don't really care about what the win-loss record looks
Yeah,
like at the end of it.
agreed.
I think what you want to see is by the end of the year, do you have something in Drake May that's building? Is because he's gonna get in there no matter what. It's either this week, probably this week against the Texans, based off if Schefter's not reporting that if it's not happening.
Yeah. Yep.
And if it's not the Texans, it's the next week.
Yeah, Schefter's not
Um,
saying that based off of tone from a press conference. He's
yeah.
saying that because he has sources, aka most likely Robert or Jonathan.
Yep. So it's probably happening this week. So what can he do to improve over the 12 games and show that he's improving each week? So
Yep.
you may not have to win, but if you show that you're improving, if you show that the offensive line is starting to maybe piece it together, where again, these aren't going to be all the same guys coming back next year. But are they doing something there? And then are the younger receivers kind of meshing well with May? Is Polk looking better? Does Baker ever see the field? Does Booty keep getting better?
Yep. He
Those
started
sorts of
this week.
things. And then defense is Covington looking more comfortable as a play caller? Are they scheming better? Are they getting better as it ends the year? Again, as Bill would say, the most important games are kind of after Thanksgiving. Again, it's not going to be for the playoffs for this team, but are you actually playing better and better and improving? Right now, they're going the opposite direction. They're playing worse
Yep.
and worse each game.
Both playing and coaching.
Correct. So are they going to be able to turn around? Are they going to be able to keep improving? That's the biggest thing I want because again, this year is all really about how you build to get to next year.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that because of that, it's acceptable to lose all these games that they are because it's not. But how are you building correctly? And it just doesn't seem right now that they are. But we'll see what they do going forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. Assuming May sees the field, I want to see how he is, how he holds up when he gets hit, when he's facing pressure. But I also want to see more out of the young people where I know their receivers are young, but I'd want to see more from Polk and Douglas on the field. I want to see more from Booty and Baker as well. Thornton most likely will be gone. Osborne's like should probably be traded too. He hasn't really contributed much. They have Bourne under contract for next year, but I want to see what do you have in these young receivers? Do you have anything? I know Polk has been getting some separation, same with Douglas, but they're not really getting the ball. Are you going to have to target wide receiver again in free agency or the draft? Probably. But what are you going to be using that? Like my guess is they have to use the first pick on a tackle. What are you using that second round pick? Is it on another tackle where you want to move a when you to guard? Or are you going to use it on the best available wide receiver? Or are you going to use it on the best available defensive player? Because as we've seen, the defense hasn't been as good as we were expecting to. So I want to see a lot from the young players, both on offense and defense, but start to plan for next year too. What are you going to be doing with the when you? Are you moving him? Is he staying at guard or do you want him at tackle? If you want him at guard, play him specifically at guard. If you want him at tackle, move him to tackle specifically so you can assess the young players you have, which ones on the offensive line are you planning on bringing back next year and developing, and which ones are you moving on from? And then you know clearly, I'm having a when you at right tackle no matter what. I need a right guard. Leighton Robinson isn't it. I need to draft a right guard. Or Cole Strange is coming back, and I want him at center if David Andrews retires. Or maybe I just want to cut him if he's not healthy. So playing around with the different formations and seeing what is the team going to be looking like next year, and what do we need to focus on this offseason and cut bait with the players we don't want.
Yep. No, agreed. All right.
All right,
If you want to go with
next
this
one I
one.
wrote specifically for you because I want
Yeah.
to. I know your thoughts on Wolf. I know your thoughts on Mayo. I know your thoughts on AVP.
Yeah.
This is a would you rather based on a 5 game overreaction. We don't know if the coaches are going to get any better or if Mayo's going to start to learn and improve. This is just growing pains. But based off of these 5 weeks, the trends that are going, would you rather A, replace Wolf with the top GM available, but you keep Mayo as your head coach? B, you keep Wolf as your GM, but you replace Mayo with Vrabel. Or C, you replace both Wolf with top GM and Mayo with either Vrabel or the top available head coach, Ben Johnson, someone like that. But you keep AVP as your OC and Peters as your offensive line.
And the second option, does that mean that Vrabel's bringing his own staff with him?
No, Robin Glazer and Jonathan Kraft choose.
So AVP stays in?
AVP is probably gone if it's he probably has some say, but it's not like 100% his guys.
Ugh. Um, I would go with B still. So keep Wolf as GM and replace Mayo with Vrabel. I think I just don't think who knows, maybe Mayo will end up being a good head coach
Yeah,
eventually. He's not the right guy for this team right now.
yeah.
Where this
And
is
he's
a
only coached 5 years. with none of
Yeah.
them being a true coordinator.
This team, right, the way it is right now, um, would be hard for anyone, and especially anyone stepping in for Bill. Uh,
Yeah.
for any coach coming in here, let alone a first time head coach that hadn't really done much. So he wasn't even a play caller in the league. He wasn't a defensive coordinator. So going from that to being a head coach is a big jump, and having to kind of making sure you know what's going on the entire time is really tough.
Yeah.
So
For
yeah, I
for
would say.
for me, I went back and forth on it a little bit. I ultimately, I think I lean B just because I think Vrabel is one of the top coaches in the league, and he's probably not going to be available after this year.
Mhm.
And if he's not available, who's going to be available as coaches next year or the year after? There might not be any good candidates. So I'd lean B, but I'm also very open to A because I think Mayo can become a head coach. He is very young, very inexperienced. I'm not saying he's one and done 100% or should be. Right
Mhm.
now, it's looking that way, but again, it's only 5 games into the season. And I think Wolf has been absolutely horrendous.
Yeah.
So lean B,
Yeah.
but open to A.
Yeah, I could see either one. Just I wanted Vrabel to begin with anyway last year, so this would be my way of getting him, and that way you're ensuring that you have a good head coach. Because still with A, you don't know. Um, all right, no, we'll do these ones real quick because we said 5 questions. Bonus 5 game reaction. Which rookie QB will have the best rookie contract? Just state which one, not saying why.
I'd say Caleb just because I still think he has the most talent, and I think Jaden's too young or too skinny, where I think he's eventually going to get broken.
So since I said it's just the
Yeah.
rookie contract first 5 years, I'm going to say Jay and Daniels because he has all the tools to be the best quarterback, and I think the mental makeup more than Caleb. He's not with the Bears. The Bears suck, and that was more than I said. Based on what we know, Mixon with potential high draft pick and cap space this offseason, will the Patriots make the playoffs next year?
I say no. I'm hoping they do. They have the potential to do, but based on I don't trust the front office to pick the right players, and I don't trust Mayo and the coaching staff to put the players in the right situation. So based on these first 5 games, I say no.
I say no as well. I think it'll be like the Chargers situation,
Yeah,
kind of
very
year
very
two
good
of
analogy.
Herbert. Um, where you're maybe 7-9, eight
Seven
and
ten,
seven,
seven
10,
ten, eight
eight
and
and
nine.
nine,
Yeah,
somewhere around there, kind of middling. And then if you're Bill, what's your preferred destination next year if you get the choice?
I'd say Bengals just because they have the best offense, and he can help build that defense. But again, I don't know if Taylor's going to get fired. Right now, they're 1-4, so it's not looking great. But I think Bengals, Jaguars, if you believe in Trevor Lawrence, might be the best situation for him because no one believes in Trevor Lawrence or the Jaguars. So if you
Mhm.
believe in him to be a good quarterback, and if you get full personnel power there, you can help build your team and build a team that's never really had much success. And if he leads them to the Super Bowl, that would help boost his legacy.
I think the Eagles.
Yeah,
Because the other thing
they're
which I
getting
didn't
older though.
know, they are getting older, but he only has a couple years. And then the other thing I didn't know is that apparently Laurie and Kraft hate each other more than Jones and Kraft do. So
Oh,
that
I
might
didn't know
put
that.
another one up because Laurie originally wanted the Patriots to buy them, and then
Hmm.
Kraft got them instead of him. Where apparently Jones and Kraft used to be friends before, so they still have a little bit of like friendliness, even though they like dislike each
Yeah.
other. Whereas I think Laurie and Kraft hate each other, so
Okay.
would be nice to see a Super Bowl there. All right, Texans, real quick, because I think everyone knows they're really were they 3-1, 4-1, whatever,
Four
something in
and one.
one.
Four and
Four
one.
and one.
And they were my prediction to win the Super Bowl. I believe they were your prediction to make it to the Super Bowl, or did they lose in the AFC Championship game? I forgot.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, but
But I mean, they're
they're
gonna be up there.
yeah. I mean, they have an elite passing game. Stroud has been incredible as a quarterback. His only bad game, really, his whole career was against Brian Flores' Minnesota Vikings, who has made everyone look bad this year.
Hmm.
They have really elite wide receivers and receiving options with Nico Collins. He left the game with a hamstring injury. I'm not sure his status for this
They're
upcoming
saying
season.
week to week now instead of originally they were saying day to day, so it
Okay.
might be likely
So
that
he'll
he's out.
probably be out, which
He'll
is,
probably be out anyway because they're going to realize that they don't need to score much
yeah.
against the Patriots to win. So,
But he's a great wide receiver. So without him, it helps the Patriots' chances, but they don't really have much chance, to be honest. Diggs, he hasn't been the same receiver he was a couple years ago, but he's still a good wide receiver. They have Dalton Schultz at tight end, who's a pretty solid tight end. They have Tank Dell as a third wide receiver. Rushing attack, they have Joe Mixon and then Damian Pierce. Their all line is fantastic. One of the best left tackles in the NFL in Laramie Tunsil, Shaq Mason at right guard. They're pretty much stacked all around on the offensive side. They also have John Mechie and Robert Woods as other wide receiving options too. So even without Nico Collins, they'll still have a good passing attack. On the defensive side, they have an elite defensive line. They have Will Anderson, who was the number 3 pick in the draft last year, who was Defensive Rookie of the Year. They also have Danielle Hunter, who I think he only has 1.5 sacks this season, but he had 16.5 last year. Really good secondary with Singletary, with Ward, with they have rookie Lassiter, pretty good linebacking group. So they're pretty solid all the way around. And Nick Caserio has really built a team where 2 years ago it looked pretty pessimistic, their chances. But he's really turned the team around quick.
Yep. No, agreed. I don't think I really have much to add there. So prediction time. Texans are favored by 7 points, over under
Oh,
37.
one thing too is we were talking about how Drake may start, and this is
Oh
probably one
yeah.
of the worst options. So Josh Allen, the Texans played the Bills last week. Josh Allen was 9 for 30, and he got concussed. I know he stayed in the game, but he got a concussion.
Mhm.
This is not a place you want to have Drake May making his first start against one of the best defenses in the NFL, one of the best talented defenses in the NFL. So if he does start, it's going to be interesting to see. I don't have high faith that he makes it through the game or looks great, but we shall see.
All right. So again, Texans favored by 7 points, over under 37.5. I've got the Texans winning 34-10.
I I have the Texans. Uh, okay, 45-3.
All right. All right.
So I think it's going to be a blowout. Good luck. Have fun at that game, Kevin.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
we're wrong. Hopefully they
Mhm.
pull off an upset. But
I think one last kind of question is if these scores are true and one of them happens like this, what's the leash on AVP before he gets stripped of play calling duties by the end of the year?
they don't have anyone else unless they go with McAdoo. It's
It
not
has
like
to go to
Mayo is an
McAdoo.
offensive coach. He can't call the plays. Like
No,
they
they
have to
probably
get.
have to go to McAdoo at that point, which I don't know. I don't know how
Yeah,
much better that would be, but
yeah. I don't know. I think they'd have to stay course with the staff they've built.
all right. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. We'll catch you guys next week. Hopefully this game is better than the last game, but we'll see. And make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and make sure you catch us next time.